All right, can you guys see my screen here?
We got you.
Hello?
Yep,
You
you're
got
good
me?
to. Yep, you're good to go.
All right, so just want to hit, obviously, Jim Leonhard, defensive coordinator and the defensive backs coach at Wisconsin. Most of you know my bio, but I'm excited to talk to you guys. Obviously, a unique situation here as far as where we're at in our off seasons. I think the college level is probably in panic mode more than anybody else, especially Division I level. High school, you guys are used to not seeing your athletes for significant stretches of time, especially if you're not involved in other sports. And Division III level, this is every year for you guys. So I think the Division I level, the challenge is getting good information in these situations. And just a heads up a little bit, I feel bad following those two guys because they're obviously extremely good at clinics and doing what they do. I usually avoid them like the plague. You know, my philosophy, I guess, on football and scheme especially is it is truly a system. It is truly a all-encompassing plan. So to go on for 15, 20, 30 minutes on scheme, I feel like is very superficial and you don't get very far. So what I'm going to hit on today is a little bit of my kind of core beliefs in coaching and life. I think it translates really well and to me, that really gets to your non-negotiables, right? It's what do you push every day with your players? What do you demand of your players every day? What are the expectations of that group that they know? They're clear, they're consistent. And then off of that, I want to just hit man coverage a little bit, which stealing from Randy Moss, if the quarterback holds the ball or throws the ball long enough, everything turns into man coverage. So I think that applies to every coach at every level, putting a defense together. And, you know, I'm glad to go after these first two presenters because I know simplicity is what they do, and trying to make complex things come across in a very, very easy manner and seem like anyone can do it effectively. I definitely fall along those lines. So just going on to core beliefs a little bit. Best quote I probably took from my football career as far as coaching goes that I've implemented into my coaching is Rex Ryan, which he may have stolen it from somebody else. I'll give him credit. Football is a simple game complicated by coaches. We really can make this game a lot bigger than it is. Now, it is a very intricate game at the highest levels. There is a lot of detail. Do not get me wrong, but I think there's a lot of times where we try to make the game more complicated than it needs to be because it always comes back to those finer details and what we do. And the rest of my philosophy kind of comes off of this, but I really think we need, as coaches, just need to just figure out what can we coach? You know, what can you effectively get your guys to do on a consistent basis? That anything more than that is a waste, and you're really not doing your kids justice as far as what you're trying to get accomplished, or you're not putting the game in their hands to let them win for you. So, first core belief for myself is consistency and creating consistency. And I believe the goal, I don't care, it comes from the defensive back world, but I think it applies to all, right? The goal of coaching and the goal of playing is be as fast as possible, as physical as possible, and as confident as possible. And the majority of coaching takes away from those things. And the consistency in your coaching style, I think it starts there, right? Being the same guy on a daily basis. Kind of what you're trying to teach your players on and off the field, right? Is consistency is a habit, and it can be trained if it's something that you focus on every day. And to me, I take it down to my coaching style. Am I the same energy every day, right? And you're going to have highs and lows. I'm not trying to say I'm a monotone type of guy, but As far as your approach and how you handle your players on a day-to-day basis, is it consistent? Do they know what to expect? Therefore, when you're out of character a little bit, it catches their attention. I think one of the things I hate is when coaches are around me that I see on game day are different guys, from an energy level, from a nervous standpoint, maybe from a communication standpoint, you name it. When they're not consistent on game day with what you see the rest of the week, that's a big pet peeve of mine. Teaching progression, just how you give your information to your players on a daily basis, from an off season all the way through the season, just what your progression is to get them to learn a skill, to get them to learn a defense. Is it consistent? Do they know what to expect? I think guys feel comfort in that. And then you're providing ways to be flexible with that so they don't get in a comfort zone. They don't always know what to expect, but I think you have to have a progression in order to change that. Terminology. I would say our big thing right now, with this extended time that we're given, I've talked to a lot of coaches. I've seen a lot of people handling this situation differently. A lot of clinics, a lot of new information coming in. I think my approach to this is, how do you do your job better, right? Can we make things cleaner? Can we implement maybe a term that would help clean up things for our players? So terminology, or your routine, right? Your daily routine, weekly routine. To me, this was huge being a young coordinator, creating that routine and understanding how to get to those second level things faster. That was something over the course of a couple of years that really took me to the next level of just making sure I knew what process I had to go through for us, a Sunday after a game, all the way to game day. And then in that game prep, kind of continuing on that. We are very complex in what we do in many people's eyes, but with how I ask our guys to coach it and the consistency that we have in how we coach and teach, I think it makes it simple for our guys, and they trust what we do. Second core belief going on here would be efficiency. I am not a first in, last out guy. I believe you find as many ways as possible to do your job as well as you can, as efficiently as you can. And I don't say that to be lazy. I say that because you're always challenging yourself to do things better. If you're not with your players, you better be finding ways to get yourself to be a better coach, for you to be a better communicator, for you to relay information to your players in a more efficient manner. To me, otherwise you're wasting valuable time. So the challenge this offseason for our guys in this process is just, how can you get your players better faster, right? All this online learning, and there's so many things out there right now that we're forced to use, and I think we're all going to be better off for it in the long run. Flexibility is the next thing, and that kind of comes with the complexity of what we do. For those of you that don't know, our base defense is a tight front. Our nickel defense is a 4 down, over, under front, however you want to look at it. We implement both, and it is a very sound scheme, but there is a ton of flexibility in what we do. Our guys understand the base concepts of what we're going to ask them to do. The complexity comes from being almost polar opposite as far as the fronts and what a team has to prepare for. But the biggest thing that we do as a staff and as a defense, we build in a ton of flexibility for the most complex of problems that you're going to see from an offense, whether that is a specific run game, whether it's issues in the pass game and how teams attack you, whether it's the tempo, all those things that you see as the most complex issues that you're going to face week in and week out from your film study. That is where we build in the most flexibility within our scheme. Therefore, we get to what I would say is less calls and more adjustments, which we found calms our guys down. We can teach the basis of what we do. We can teach all of the finer details and get very, very detailed, and then have minor adjustments to what we do, rather than having just more on top of more on top of more as far as schemes and calls and assignments for guys. So that is our challenge week in and week out, is to make things as tight as possible. And, you know, a lot of coaches who I've met with and sat down with, it's almost the opposite. It's start with everything and shrink it down. I'd say we start with almost bare bones and then just add to a game plan based on what the issues we're going to see, based on how we can dictate, right? I never want to be a counter puncher. I always want us to have things in our game plan that we can dictate the flow to an offense. You know, you need these offenses to have to go over to the sideline and find an answer. And the more flexibility you have within your scheme and the more ways that you have to be that, throwing that jab or throwing some of those uppercuts on them, then they have to go make adjustments and not just attack, which is what they all want to do. And then I think this is where I want to start a petition as far as number 4. This one is probably my biggest pet peeve in football. And I really felt it as a player, and now as a coach, it's something I really push with our guys. And the way I have it written is response versus opportunity to grow. I think, you know, just an example that I'll throw out there is you lose a game. And I think the thing that entire football world goes to is that following week of how are you going to respond, right? How are you going to respond to adversity? It's a loss. Who knows? You know, in the landscape of college football, you know, a loss or two, you're out of the picture, and you're not in that conversation that you want to be in at the end of the season. So I think the biggest thing that I take is a response is in the moment, right? You have one opportunity for a response, and that is, you know, let's say as a defensive back, you give up a touchdown, right? How do you respond that next drive? How do you respond the rest of that game? That is a response. Once that game is over, once that moment, right, that following moment of competitiveness is over, it is all time to reflect. It's opportunities to grow. And you know, really take this from the military a little bit of the debriefings, and how do you sit down and look back and learn on what you learned, you know, what are the lessons that you have to learn from adversity that you went through, and how you handled those responses. What was your response in the moment? And when you look back, are you going to grow, right? That is probably the biggest thing that I see, because I think there's a lot of time as coaches that we spend on creating a response, right? Trying to generate emotion on a Wednesday that needed to be there on a Saturday or on a Thursday when guys are still in their feelings, right? That just means they didn't learn the right lesson, right? The opportunity to grow is being missed. So I'm going to start a petition. I think hopefully I can get you coaches to sign it, just as far as the terminology we're using and how we're trying to get guys to learn, and really the lessons that they can take out of football, and how you need to respond immediately, right? That's why you train. You train for that immediate response. And how does your body, right? How does your heart rate? How does your brain? How does everything react to that current situation of adversity, or, you know, heightened senses playing in front of 80,000 people? You have to learn from those in-moment responses that you have, and it might be how you have to train the next week in order to get yourself better for that moment, or calm yourself in that moment. So you really have to take advantage of those times to reflect and grow, and then put them into play as you go on. So I would say, you know, young in my coaching career, these are the things that are most important to me, to really get across to our players. And I think our guys have responded really well. They know what to expect. I think they are learning how to learn to think for themselves. Becoming adaptable as a player is extremely invaluable. There are a million scenarios that can come up on the football field. And as coaches, you try to expose players to as much as possible, knowing that you're outside of the white lines on game day, and you're counting on guys to step up and respond in positive ways. So you have to give them room to grow. You have to give them room to think. And you hope that when you step in and really drive home your core beliefs, and sitting back from that 30,000 feet view of watching these guys and how they respond. And that's how I try to get my guys better, a little bit in that less is more. Moving on now to the man coverage portion of the evening. Like I said, everything to me can get into man coverage, right? Everything can eventually get there. So this to me is the one thing as far as a defensive back perspective that can be applied to what we do as coaches on the defensive side of the ball in the coverage. And I think the biggest thing to take away is, once again, the simplicity. Fast, confident, and physical is always the goal. So every coaching point that I give these guys, right, you're trying to balance those three things and trying to keep it as simple as possible for our guys. Not going to tell you guys where to align with your corners, right? Press. Am I inside? Am I head up? Am I outside? Everyone has different reasons for doing one or the other, and that's okay, right? Depth off the ball and press is going to vary too much in a small amount of time to teach, right? Most teams are playing some sort of leverage, right? As long as you have your reasonings for playing it week to week, you're in good shape. To me, the biggest thing we try to get our corners and safeties to understand is what is a winning position first and foremost, right? And for us, we talk three different positions. We talk high shoulder, which is a position where I'm on top of the receiver. I cannot touch him, right? So I'm in a position where I'm thinking I'm going to win with my feet, right? It's eyes and feet at this point, and I'm truly trying to be far enough away where I can read this receiver, right? I can see his mannerisms, how his shoulders are turning. Does he look back? Is he digging, right? Is he trying to get on top of me? But it's eyes and first and foremost, and trusting that I have to cover a little ground. I got to get out of a break. Well, when do we use this situation? We use it a little bit more in quarters coverage when they don't have post help, right? We use this. The other situation is versus outside releases, right? We talk about getting high or top shoulder versus outside releases because you have no help, right? The post player can't get there. Every once in a while, that post player is going to show up if you got a great one, but you cannot count on it, right? So high shoulder is a position we talk in certain coverages and certain areas on the field. Top shoulder, now I can put my hand on his chest, right? He has to run through me if he's trying to run a go route. And in that position for us is used a ton. That is the other position that we talk about in quarters and outside releases, because you're running out of help, right? You got to take care of yourself. You have to be your own help. You have to use the sideline and help run a receiver off his line in that position. And then getting to the hip, right? I'm talking probably eyes on top, maybe my head, my shoulders just on top of his hip, but I want to be in almost even, or my hip slightly below his hip. And in this situation, we are talking about man coverage, so we have a post player on inside releases, right? We want to be in a position where we can feel a lean. We do not want to get stacked, right? We want to continue to push a receiver off his line, but we're willing to play a little bit lower because in our defense, right, we're playing more with a whole player in man coverage, or we're playing a lot of match cover 3. So we have some inside presence for us, and then we have a post player. I would say the two positions that I talk about a lot with our guys is where you at 2 and where you at 10, right? If you're in a winning position at 2 and 10, when you're in press coverage, you're going to routes, you're going to give receivers issues, you're going to have to make them deal with you and beat you in and out of breaks or at the point of attack all game long. The next thing, and it kind of carries over from my philosophy, just that consistent coaching points. Our body positions, right, what we ask our guys to do in press and off man is exactly the same, right? And reason being is you don't want them thinking a ton of thoughts, right? Fast and confident at the defensive back position. Great ones are also physical, but fast and confident has to happen. So consistent and the less coaching as possible to get the job done is what you're looking for. It's all about eye discipline. We all know that. We force our guys to try to play with a little bit of space to win with eyes and cover ground and have to stick their foot in the ground. And that's probably the biggest thing. And we know in a lot of situations they're going to end up closer than that. Alignment, right? Just what alignment did I pick? Am I winning it? Right? Do I need to maintain it, or can I transition my leverage? Big term that I think you guys can steal is transitioning leverage. Most guys that are at the high school level that really struggle when they get to college, once the competition gets more even, is they're used to bullying guys in, it doesn't matter whether it's at the line of scrimmage or at the top of routes. That's not really realistic, the better players that they start playing. So the ability to transition your leverage, which would also transition where you're trying to win on the route at times, is probably the most beneficial kind of term that we use. You have to be a master of tempo to play man coverage, right? Press and off. You have to understand your speed versus the receiver that you're playing, and you have to understand how they use tempo getting off the ball and how they use their releases. You have to be able to study how guys raise up, and a lot of this just comes down with repetition. And with that, we implement a lot of eyes. It's trying to find in every drill that we do, how do you implement your eyes? Because otherwise guys just start doing drills just to do it. So our big thing is trying to find a way to implement eyes either at the top of a route, at the break point, how in all those transitions, it's how do you train eyes with all this stuff. And then the last thing, as far as just the consistency of what we coach, I would say is just talking angles all day. It's what angles are the correct angles to get you to one of those winning positions. And it's different from the different leverages that you're at. You know, if you're inside leverage and get an outside break and route, you know, outside release, your angle is going to be different than if you're outside leverage, right? The ability to use your hands and play with physicality is also going to be predicated on leverage and what releases you're getting. A lot of the best defensive backs that you watch are not overly physical in press coverage. They understand angles. They use their hands and are physical when they should be, but they trust their angles more than anything in order to get them out of trouble and to win down the field. Flexibility and technique. So this is probably the most important thing for guys at the high school level. You know, recruiting in college, and it's not perfect in any way, but you can, if you really are limited in how you want to coach techniques, you can consistently get guys that fit that mold of your teaching style and the techniques you like to play. But the biggest thing that I took from the NFL is that flexibility and technique. I was around some of the best to ever do it. I know there's a lot of debate, and I was with Darrelle Revis in his prime. You know, I played with Nate Clements. He was the highest paid guy when I was with him. His deal was the highest paid corner. Samari Rolle played for 10 plus years. I was with Joe Hayden. He signed one of the biggest contracts. I was with Champ Bailey in his career. And the thing that I took away from all those situations is they were all drastically different. And it came down from a alignment, from a technique, from an eye placement, how they use their hands, how they use their speed, and what their ability was at the time. It was all different. It was all very different. So we teach a lot of variability in man coverage. And this is goes back to Matt's talk there with curiosity. And to be great at man coverage, you have to be a very curious individual, because you have to be willing to try different eye placements, right? Am I a via the neck type of guy with my eye placement? Do I need to be down at the waistline or lower from, am I from hips to knees? There's guys who teach eyes on the back leg in press coverage. There's a million different things, and all great reasons, and guys playing at the highest level doing all of them. But the flexibility in which you teach has to be there. And otherwise, you're trying to get that square peg in a round hole as far as your talent goes, especially at the high school level. And the last thing is exposing your players to as many different situations as possible. They have to be adaptable in order to thrive at the highest level. They have to be able to see situations and recognize and make decisions in the moment. And once again, that goes back to the overcoaching aspect. When you overcoach guys, they really, really struggle in those situations where split-second reactions have to happen, and they have to have a thought process there that goes without having to process information. So being as adaptable as you can within your drills and within your practices to make guys get into awkward positions and find ways out of it, right? You talk about winning positions. Well, what do you do when you're not in them? How do you regain it when you're 3, 4, 5 yards away from where you need to be? You know, those are a lot of the situations that we talk about with our guys, because it comes up in every game. You cannot avoid it. I don't care how good you are. There's going to be situations that come up that you have to have that flexibility and adaptability in order to dig yourself out of a tough situation at times. So that is what I have for you guys. Just want you guys to know I'm more than welcome to work with Drew here and try to get something set up on a smaller scale.